Tonight, the secret plan. President Trump evading an Iranian assassination threat with an elaborate plane swap. The covert maneuver to get President Trump out of the NATO summit in Turkey. The president boarding the old Air Force One in front of cameras, sneaking onto a catering truck and flying on a different plane. The new details about the shoulder-to-air missile threat and questions about the White House staff and Americans left on the decoy plane that was a target. The extremely dangerous storm battering the Midwest right now, unleashing torrential rain and tornado warnings, winds hitting almost 100 miles an hour, even flipping a car on the highway. In Illinois, did lightning set this home ablaze? Hundreds dead in Colombia, 3,000 still missing. The frantic race to rescue anyone still alive. New video capturing the powerful quake hitting, sending buildings crashing down. A family escaping their home just in time. And the miraculous rescues, people forming a human chain. And this, a 6-month-old pulled out alive. The former Marine imprisoned in Russia just released. The questions about his health. And the one thing he asked from President Trump. The pivotal hearing for accused CEO killer Luigi Mangione ahead of his state murder trial. Why the judge wants the jury to remain anonymous. A high-rise crane in Miami collapsing into a pool. The construction crew seen holding on for dear life. Also tonight, found alive. Body cam capturing the moment rescuers discover a family stranded 3 days in the woods. How they survived by eating tree bark, flowers, and even ants. Nightly News starts right now.
This is NBC Nightly News with Tom Llamas.
And good evening. It is great to be with you on this Tuesday night. We want to begin with the new details of President Trump's secret flight from Turkey last month to avoid a possible Iranian assassination threat. As we're learning about who was left behind on a decoy plane and the kind of weapon U.S. officials feared the Iranians could use to shoot the president's plane out of the sky. This was the moment the ploy began. Look closely when President Trump boarded the old Air Force One in Ankara with a catering truck seen here, later used to ferry him hidden from public view to this smaller jet parked nearby, a scoop first reported by the Washington Post. Still on board the 747, though, dozens of journalists and White House staffers, as well as Secretary of State Marco Rubio and Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent. That plane lifting off believed to be the intended target. But tonight we're learning more about why the White House feared the worst. A U.S. official now telling us about the extremely serious and rapidly changing nature of the threat, calling it the most unprecedented level of alertness we've ever been at. And the White House believed Iran was possibly planning to use a shoulder-to-air missile to bring down the president's plane. Garrett Haake has the latest on this story. He starts us off tonight.
Tonight, new details of the elaborate operation by the Secret Service to covertly swap President Trump's planes amid fears of an Iranian assassination plot. All of it happening at last month's NATO summit in Turkey, just a few hundred miles from the Iranian border. The president had arrived aboard his Qatari-gifted Air Force One, but raised eyebrows by announcing he'd take an older plane home, sending the new plane ahead to a British airbase.
It's flying to Europe, to one of the big bases, so the soldiers can see it because it's truly magnificent.
But tonight, a U.S. official tells NBC News the change was made because of a, quote, extremely serious Iranian threat, including that the Iranian regime could target the president with a shoulder-fired missile. So the Secret Service devising a clandestine departure plan. It was a snap decision, the U.S. official tells us. Our job is to keep the president safe, adding, this is probably the most unprecedented level of alertness we've ever been at. You could see the president boarding the old Air Force One. Then, as the camera pulls back, there's a glimpse of a catering truck parked behind it. Later, a small group of reporters, the press pool, unwittingly board what would become a decoy jet, as Secret Service agents were covertly moving President Trump to that catering truck, which drives away and pulls up next to a small military jet further down the tarmac. That plane would then fly President Trump out of Turkey. Tonight, a U.S. official telling NBC News that Cabinet Secretaries Marco Rubio and Scott Bessent and other senior staff remained on board the decoy plane. the old light blue and white Air Force One, while Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth joined President Trump on the smaller aircraft. After landing in the UK, President Trump is seen walking off the old Air Force One, which he had secretly just reboarded. Back aboard the new plane, he brushed off a question about Iranian threats.
Were you aware of any credible threat by Iran against Air Force One?
Well, I have a threat all the time. I'm number one on their list.
Garrett joins us now live from the White House. Garrett, let's go back to that decoy plane. What does the Secret Service or the White House say about all the Americans, including crew, senior staff, and journalists, that could have potentially been blown out of the sky?
Well, Tom, the Secret Service has declined to comment entirely, but a senior official who was on that trip told me that for the White House, the president's safety is paramount and that staff and press simply won't be treated the same, adding, quote, "Those are the risks everyone signs up for." Tom?
Garrett Haake with that major update tonight. Garrett, we thank you. We're also tracking across the Midwest an extremely dangerous situation playing out tonight with a powerful storm system bringing damaging winds, flash floods, and dangerous lightning. Maggie Vespa is in the storm zone for us tonight.
Destructive, deadly storms slamming the Midwest. Intense winds blowing over this train car. Blinding rain rocketing through the Chicago area. Tornado sirens blaring.
Oh my God, this is so scary.
Millions sheltering in place. Crowds at Chicago's iconic Navy Pier taking cover in a parking garage. Winds in some areas gusting to nearly 100 miles per hour. In suburban Homewood, Eric Anthony taking cover with his family of 4.
I took my family right downstairs and we just heard the tree limbs falling, the wind getting very high, hail.
In nearby Frankfurt, stunning video shows this home fully engulfed. Firefighters tell me it was either caused by lightning or downed electrical equipment.
You heard boom, like it sounded like a missile went off.
We met homeowner Tammy McKee, who narrowly escaped with her 79-year-old mother.
It's just devastating. It's heartbreaking. It's so many things.
Across the storm zone, power knocked out to more than 900,000 customers already. In northwest Indiana, authorities investigating what caused this home to explode as the severe weather moved through.
You can see flames still shooting out. Debris is everywhere.
At least one person killed. And in Ohio, a traffic camera on I-71 in Columbus capturing winds lifting this vehicle into the air and flipping it. Ohio's governor declaring a state of emergency in multiple counties amid widespread flooding. In Perry County, some residents forced from their homes. The weather now being blamed for at least one death in that state.
Maggie joins us now just south of Chicago in Frankfurt. We see that burned out home there, maybe because of lightning. Maggie, these storms there have just been relentless in Illinois, and residents there have all the reason to be fed up.
Yeah, Tom, exactly. Tammy, who lives in this house that might have been struck by lightning, even talked about how chaotic this whole summer has been. For instance, you look at tornado reports. Illinois so far this year has had a record 232, 2 to 3 times what we've seen in years past, Tom.
Maggie Vespa for us. Maggie, thank you. Tonight, our team has made it into the quake zone in Colombia as rescue units are urgently working to find those still trapped beneath debris. The death toll spiked again today, but as George Solis reports, there are still moments of hope, as you're about to see, including a baby pulled out alive.
This hospital torn apart during dangerous tremors that rocked the region when an earthquake hit Colombia. Healthcare workers forced to care for newborns outside. A family in Pereira narrowly escaping their home, the ground beneath them cracking. Seconds later, debris comes crashing down. Others scrambling for safety, running out of the school as columns fell around them. Tonight, the death toll rising as more than 3,000 people have been reported missing by relatives. Rescue teams now desperately searching for survivors at this collapsed apartment building in hard-hit Cali.
Take a look at this human chain of first responders and volunteers, some of them survivors themselves, all of them moving that smaller debris. The objective here is to clear the road so that bigger machinery can get in.
There have been glimmers of hope. This 6-month-old infant pulled from the rubble, captured by a local news network, reporting that rescuers heard voices calling out from the concrete. Overnight firefighters saving this 35-year-old man who was trapped. A brief moment of silence to listen for signs of life, and then cheers. There are people, one man exclaims. Emergency crews putting this survivor on a stretcher as those gathered celebrated. This aerial footage showing the vast destruction across the region. Angela Yabarba's building collapsed and says it's a miracle of God she's alive. Everything was destroyed, she says. The water pipes burst, the floors cracked open. 15-year-old Samuel Rubio showed up today, bringing water to rescuers. He was in a class when the quake struck, sharing this video he filmed. I wouldn't be here, Rubio says, if the building had fallen on my school. It happened to all of us Colombians, he says. We all feel it. Estefania Peralta says she's holding on to hope. We have to hold on to that, she says. Hope that there might be someone alive. Tom, and this is what makes it so hard to get people out of this debris. You can see just how high it's stacked. An army of volunteers and first responders moving heavy buckets to hopefully be able to find somebody in this rubble. Tom?
That urgent effort still ongoing there. George Solis for us. President Trump today with a surprising announcement about an American released from a Russian prison. And tonight there are questions about his health as the first images are emerging of his release after 4 years locked up overseas. Keir Simmons joins us now live. And Keir, the president saying the release came after a conversation he had with Vladimir Putin.
Tom, that's right. President Trump posting this picture of Robert Gilman tonight on his way home after spending years in a Russian prison. The celebrations marred by how sick his friends say he is. This was him in 2024, a former Marine jailed for attacking a police officer. His sentence was extended by 10 years after an alleged clash with a prison guard. But as you can see, he looks very different today. President Trump saying that Gilmore was released on a humanitarian basis after that conversation with President Putin. He's expected to land at Andrews Air Force Base anytime now. And Tom, President Trump says that he has spoken to Gilman and that he has said when he lands, he just wants a great cheeseburger. Tom?
We hope he gets that and hopefully some medical care as well. All right, Keir, we thank you. Now to election night in America, high-stakes primaries in 6 states, and all eyes on whether Democratic Socialist candidates can keep their winning streak going. Here's Ryan Nobles.
Tonight, the deep Democratic divide between socialists and the party's establishment moving to Wisconsin. Progressives hoping to notch another major win, led by Democratic Socialist candidate for governor Francesca Hong, who's leading in the polls.
We're going to respond to make sure that we talk about the solutions and how we can deliver for working class people.
Moderates turning to David Crowley, backed by the Democratic governor.
We're going to need someone who can build the necessary coalitions.
Establishment Democrats argue Hong is too controversial to win in November. Hong has repeatedly called for abolishing police, though under pressure, she recently backtracked. She's also supported canceling Thanksgiving, describing it as a colonizer holiday, but taking that back last week.
I don't want to cancel it. I actually love it.
NBC's Shaquille Brewster with Democratic voters.
I voted for Francesca Hong. I really think that she has a great platform.
Why did you vote for David Crowley?
Because I think he can win.
On the other side of the aisle, South Carolina Republicans will pick their nominee to replace the late Senator Lindsey Graham. Graham's sister, who currently holds the seat and is backed by President Trump, hoping to wade through a crowded candidate field, with some voters wondering if she has the experience necessary. Are you worried that she's just being handed the seat?
Yeah, I do.
But Graham confident she is ready.
What do you say about folks that are concerned about your lack of experience?
I think I have some really good experience. I've worked for 30 years for the state of South Carolina. I ran a state agency.
South Carolina is a very red state, so whoever wins this primary is likely to hold this seat for the next 6 years. Tom?
Ryan Nobles out on the campaign trail for us. Ryan, thank you. Here in New York, we're learning more about Luigi Mangione's state murder trial and the judge setting some major parameters when it comes to the jury. Stephanie Gosk was in court today for the pre-trial hearing. Stephanie, one of the big issues today was how the court plans to deal with all the high-profile nature of this case.
Exactly. They're going to have to manage the sheer number of people, Tom, that are going to show up on a daily basis. And the judge today said there will be an overflow room to accommodate as many as possible. Also on today's agenda, the judge wants both sides to sit down and finalize a juror questionnaire. Sitting a jury in this case could be tricky because of the incredible amount of publicity surrounding the murder of UnitedHealthcare CEO Brian Thompson. Mangione pleaded not guilty to those charges. Now, jury selection is set to begin on September 8th, and we are just learning tonight that a new hearing has been called in the federal case, Tom, for Friday. So we're going to be paying very close attention to that hearing as well.
Could be a major development there. Okay, Stephanie, we thank you for that. We're back in 60 seconds with the rescue caught on camera. 2 adults and a child missing in the woods for days after a tubing adventure down a Michigan river, what they ate to survive. And the major recall for more than 500,000 Camry owners. We'll tell you about it. Plus, way to go, Dad. Stroller in one hand, foul ball in the other. The proud papa keeping it cool in the outfield. We're back now with video of a remarkable rescue after a family's tubing trip down a river went horribly wrong. Rescuers finding them stranded, hurt, and starving after 3 days lost in the woods. Here's Morgan Chesky.
Make some noise!
Lost in deep Michigan woods for 72 hours, a cry for help answered.
Stand by.
Body cam blurred by officials, capturing State Trooper Zach Murphy leading rescuers through deep brush, trying to find a family lost from a float trip turned nightmare.
When was the last time you had water? Great deal. I don't even know.
Murphy embracing Jasmine Hawk alongside her cousin Sarah Vida and Vida's 9-year-old son, Caden.
Let me give you my shirt, okay?
Even offering his own shirt.
What were you thinking as you started to make your way back?
The thought that kept on going through my head was, I can't believe that 3 people allegedly in bathing suits with no shoes on were making the trek through that swamp.
Gonna be okay.
The group tubing Tuesday down the Muskegon River when their floats were popped by a log jam, stranding everyone. Hawk visibly cut up, seen here shaking amid severe dehydration.
I'm so happy we found you guys. I'm so happy.
The 2 cousins giving their few protein bars and water to Caden, surviving on flowers, tree bark, and ants for days. Everyone left hungry.
I want Mountain Dew, glass, root beer.
Rescuers leading the family out of the brush. Caden getting his own piggyback ride.
It was certainly a fourth quarter, fourth down Hail Mary victory.
Out of the woods, the family recovering at a hospital after an afternoon of fun became a fight for survival. Morgan Chesky, NBC News.
And we are back in a moment with the frightening new video. The construction workers, look at this, scrambling to hold on to a crane that collapsed high above Miami. Stay with us. Back now with some frightening video of a crane collapse. You can see the construction crane here in Miami standing at the top of the crane as the crew, as the arm comes crashing down into a pool, leaving the workers clinging to the broken structure. They had to hold on as that crane shook. They were eventually able to safely come down to the ground. Now to a major car recall impacting hundreds of thousands of drivers. Toyota announcing a safety recall for about 655,000 Camrys around the world because of an error that could deactivate safety features like turn signals and even hazard lights. More than 500,000 of the impacted cars, which are model year 2025 to 2026, were sold in the U.S. Check with your dealer. And at a Durham Bulls minor league game, the catch of the day happening not on the field, but in the stands. This dad nabbing a foul ball out of the air with one hand. Look at that, while pushing his baby in a stroller. The moment earning him a shout out from the Bulls, the team posting video of the epic snag. And on the south side of Chicago, White Sox fans flocking to the ballpark for a limited edition Pope Leo hat. Pope Leo famously let the world know he's a Sox fan. Divine intervention may be at play right now. They're leading their division after finishing last season. All right, when we come back, there's good news tonight about a teenage cancer survivor's beautiful tribute to the people who helped him reach a life-changing moment. That's next. Finally, there's good news tonight. A teen who beat cancer finding an unforgettable way to thank the caregivers who helped save his life.
Yeah.
This is a sound worth cheering for. 14-year-old Julian Baquero celebrating the end of cancer treatment. Sharing an emotional hug with his parents, William and Alba, giving mom an extra squeeze. Surrounding them, the people who helped Julian every step of the way during 2 years of leukemia treatments. And so Julian came ready with a way to say thank you. Yellow daisies for each of the doctors, nurses, and caregivers who helped him through some of his darkest days.
Dr. Ramirez? Yes.
Handing them out and sharing hug after hug after hug, telling us what he was feeling in those moments.
Happiness. Happiness, that's it.
Now, Julian's just excited to be a kid again.
I want to do sports. I want to do all the stuff I cannot do when I have the cancer.
The color yellow, of course, symbolizing hope. Hope that helped Julian when he needed it the most.
I will say thank you. Thank you, thank you. Yeah.
Okay, that does it for us tonight. And a programming note for tomorrow. There's an eclipse happening, so make sure to join News Now Daily and Nightly News for coverage of the total eclipse. That's Nightly News for this Tuesday. I'm Tom Llamas. We thank you so much for watching. Tonight and always, we're here for you. Good night. We thank you for watching. And remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.